We'll call this the Snowbird podcast from now on, though. This is good. We'll look for you guys for
I'm
travel
going with
recommendations.
So Art, where do you go at the Jersey Shore?
I stay home.
Oh, okay.
I
You
live
don't
at
go
the
to the
Jersey Shore.
Jersey Shore.
I go
You
to
don't
Sandy
go-
Hook with Bruce Springsteen.
Well, but you're already there.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. All right, don't even mention Bruce Springsteen, please.
I actually heard from the tabloids that Art was supposed to give Bruce a ride home, and he never showed up. And that's actually how the whole thing spiraled out of control.
Who do you
We're
think
gonna make some news tonight.
Who do you think called TMZ?
You know, a guy that I graduated high school with, Frankie Stefanko, is the premier photographer of Bruce Springsteen. He's put out a couple of coffee table sized books. He's had exhibitions. He started photographing Bruce right in the beginning. So I want to give a shout out to Frankie Stefanko, who I still count as a friend because those are the kind of people are friends for your whole life. But Frankie, please forgive us for what we're about to say to Bruce about Bruce tonight, okay? Because I expect we will touch upon him. That's all. I'm done now.
No, you're not. You're not done, but that's okay because we've got plenty of time for you to continue.
From what I'm hearing, in fact, the Asbury Park Press reported that Bruce only blew a 0.2, 25% of the legal limit. I was
Wait, so you mean a 0.02 then?
0.02, yeah.
Interesting.
I was tipped off tonight that he hired Mitchell Ansell, which is definitely the top criminal attorney or criminal defense attorney in Monmouth County, but one of the most respected and feared in the state. So I think some people are going to have some egg in their face with this. Maybe he might have been drinking in a closed area, but that doesn't deserve to have his reputation smeared all over the place and to have his Jeep commercial pulled.
Are you a Bruce fan, Art?
No, I'm not, but I'm a fairness fan. Tom DeSeno wrote a great column, a great letter to Bruce that I encourage everybody to
I
read
saw it. I read it. I read it on your blog.
Yep.
We've got our guest here, Steve. Is he a Bruce fan?
The boss? I don't know. It's a better question. I'm a Jeep fan, I suppose, at this point, for which I don't have a Jeep in my garage. So I don't know. There's a lot of minds to step on in that conversation. My goodness.
So,
yeah, I mean,
Steve, you don't want to tell us whether or not you're a Bruce fan?
I am a Bruce fan. I'm a Jersey guy. Right? What's the line, right? My story is a Jersey story. How can you not have Bruce in one of those verses?
Well, therein lies the dilemma, right? I mean, can you be a politician in New Jersey and be anti-Bruce? Is it possible?
At a risk worth taking? I don't know. Tonight, let's go to friendlier territory. There must be something to talk about: marijuana, taxes, something else a little more friendly.
Some other third rail. Bruce Springsteen.
Yeah.
Bruce Springsteen's like talking about cutting Social Security in New Jersey. Is that what you're saying?
I think that's something for at least for our folks up in LD 21. But you folks that maybe frequent the Stone Pony more than I do, you're on one side of the argument.
Well, I mean, Bruce is a Jersey Shore phenomenon. I mean, I'm over here in deep South Jersey, where I'm not too far from people who actually do have cowboy hats, because they actually do farm and agriculture and cowboy type things.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't know. I mean, we certainly have plenty of people over here that are Springsteen fans. I will say this, and we have plenty more to talk about tonight. I've always looked at Bruce Springsteen kind of in the same way that some people look at Jimmy Buffett. If I am in the right mood, in the right environment, driving on the expressway to go to the Jersey Shore in the summer, I don't mind listening to some Bruce. But just like Jimmy Buffett, every damn song is the same.
Yeah, but
Every song he
West,
sounds.
everything's all right.
I mean, it's well, right? Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's what made me think of Jimmy Buffett. Art, your hat cued me.
Taking us full circle, right? Look at that. It's amazing.
Yeah,
Well done, Art.
But I mean, every damn song is the same. Every song uses the same 6 words, like gypsy, knife, highway. It's the Jersey sound, which he innovated, and obviously he did pretty damn well with it. The guy's a gazillionaire. But I've always thought he had a lot of entertainment value, but I thought as an artist, the Boss was always a little overrated. I don't know what to tell you.
I agree, and the songs are not uplifting. They're not, to me, inspiring to the extent that I can even understand them. I can't, no, because I'm a fan of music that I can actually decipher and comprehend and understand.
Sure.
I want to be able to hear the words. That's why I'm a fan of the Great American Songbook. That's why I love to go see shows on Broadway, because it's an intimate setting. I'm not in a cavernous arena that's over amplified with people who are ill-mannered. Okay. And
But did you see Springsteen on Broadway?
No, why would I? Do you know that defiled Broadway? Broadway is for Broadway shows. That's not a Bruce Springsteen in a solo show singing and talking about his life. That's not a Broadway show. That's an abomination of Broadway. It should have never been permitted.
Frank Luna has just unfriended all of us.
I was going to say, this thing is burning down.
Bruce is as a Jersey Shore legend, and he's obviously a worldwide phenomenon. But everybody's got stories about him here and how he and Max Weinberg used to live on the hill when they first made it big, and they were sharing a place, on the same hill that I live on now, but in a much nicer neighborhood. Looking out over Sandy Hook Bay, and and he pops into watering holes in Asbury Park and in Seabright. And, he's very much a member of the community here. I've never been a huge fan of his music, but some people are, are cultish about it. Governor Chris Christie, bragged about how many
concerts he's
shows he
attended.
runs, and he can recite all the words while Bruce
I've
is
never
doing them.
been able to
And he's
understand.
he's not unusual in that regard.
Yep.
Bruce has really touched the heart. And again, Tom DeSanto spoke it really well in his column. I highly recommend that the people read it on More Mama's Musings. That he spoke to, or his early lyrics, spoke to the middle class in a way that they could identify with each other. Or the way that they, that he spoke, that they were gotten. And it's poetic, but I don't like his voice, and he sounds like a horse. But other people do.
Yeah. I mean, I guess ultimately just let it be a lesson to everybody, right? Because I actually thought, and I forget who said it, and I wish I could give them credit. They said it was a beautiful ad, but just not the right messenger. And I don't think it's that Bruce couldn't deliver that message, but he's fallen in the trap, especially in recent years, that a lot of Americans have fallen into, which is that you've done what your mother always warned you against doing. He said things that he's now living long enough to regret. Because you're right. I mean, being from Jersey, I know enough people that have had personal experiences with this guy, and they say that he's actually in person a pretty nice, generous individual. But some of his comments about needing to have an exorcism in DC and talking about how Republicans are on the wrong side of history.
That's the problem with the ad.
Yeah,
that,
I mean,
it's on the context of what he was saying a few months ago, and then to say,
right.
Now it's come together without acknowledging the divisiveness of what he said beforehand. I think the whole point of it was to sell Jeeps. I mean, let's be real about it.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be buying one.
You're not going to buy a Jeep because of it?
No, not because of that. It's just I'm a Ford guy. Okay. I'm just a Ford guy. And everybody, I buy my Fords at Holman, Lincoln, Mercury, and Ford. They don't make Mercury anymore, but Holman, Lincoln, Ford. From Lou Petty is my salesman at Holman in Maple Shade, New Jersey. Go there.
One of the things I love about Dan is he's one
Good
of
ad
these.
break.
Yeah, exactly. We got to reach out to them and get some gratuity
well
for that.
done. That's right.
And
I'm going to see a Ford logo pop up in a corner in a moment here. I think, right?
Brought to you by Ford.
That's right.
Dan is one of those guys, Steve, who has a guy for everything.
It sounds like it.
Like when you watch Seinfeld and
Yep.
Kramer's like, oh, I'm going to hook you up with my guy Bob
I got a guy for
Sacamano.
that. Yeah.
He's always got a guy, and I love that about
Here's the
him.
thing. Here's the thing, and this is a lesson for Steve. When you've been around as long as I have, you've got people. Okay, I've got people.
Yep.
I'm not a big shot. I don't have, I'm not famous or anything like that, but I do have people, and you learn what people to trust and rely on. And
Good.
I, if it works, stay with it.
Cool. Well, I'm glad I'm not running against you. Your network sounds impenetrable here. So you stay where you are. I'll stay where I am, and we'll get where we need to go.
If you're thinking about running for the Assemblyman of Broadway blogs or for South Jersey knowing people, you're outmatched, my friend.
Dan's
so we should probably talk a little bit about Steve since he's here, because God knows the three of us could just bullshit forever, but we actually have a pretty good guest tonight. And since we decided a few weeks ago we were going to start having people on, I made a point, and I know Art, I talked to you about this. I'm sure Dan agrees. I don't want to have people on just to have people on. I want to have people on that I actually think add to the conversation and are interesting. Because quite frankly, all of us are busy professionals that have other stuff to do. I could easily be in the other room right now, sitting on the couch with my wife, enjoying my old fashioned, watching Real Housewives of whatever. Whether it be more enjoyable, I don't know, but I would enjoy the company of my lovely wife at least, and I'd be more relaxed than having Dan get me worked up about Bruce Springsteen and G-Bad. But we do this because we believe that New Jersey needs to be saved, shameless plug, and that we should talk to people who may have an idea of how to get that ball rolling down the field. And Steve,
I'm doing it because my wife is doing a Dark Shadows marathon on Netflix.
Okay.
If it was
Dark
Real House,
Shadows.
yeah. Oh man,
That's it. That's old school.
it really is. And they
that's a good show, though. That's a good show.
They colorize it.
All right, Steve, leave. We're going to talk about Dark Shadows.
I was going to say, right, this is a deep cut. Yeah, you guys are really going
deep cut. Steve Spurr, everyone.
Thanks, guys. That was fun.
but no, we have with us tonight a guy who is, I think he could be one of the men of the future for the Republican Party in New Jersey as we kind of go into this period of rebuilding and looking forward and figuring out what we're going to be doing down the road. Steve Spurr, he's running for Assembly this year. And back up for just a second. I think you're the Republican municipal chairman in Summit.
In Summit, yep. I have been
Correct.
For the past just over 2 years now. Yep.
For over 2 years, and I've gotten to know Steve over the year from going to events. And when I say going to events, I don't mean like high-priced cocktail parties. I mean, he's the guy in the room actually volunteering, trying to get some stuff done for Republican candidates. And he decided to throw his hat in the ring in LD21 this year. Quick synopsis. You may have heard Senator Tom Kean, who has represented that district for a while as a state senator, is moving on. He's putting all his chips in a rematch with Tom Malinowski in NJ7 next year. The NRCC just confirmed today that it's going to be one of their top targets in the Joe Biden midterm. So that's kind of created this domino effect where now John Bramnick, who's in the Assembly, is going to move up and try to take Tom Kean's seat, and that then opens up an Assembly seat. Nancy Muniz is the other Assembly member in that district. So there's a seat to be won, and I think, Steve, you were the first one that threw your hat in the ring, right? You said that if Tom Kean's not running, I'm running.
January 3rd, it was the fateful day. But, frankly, this conversation had been brewing for months because Tom Kean's chances were he was looking awful good right in through the middle of November, frankly, when everyone will recall it came down to 5,000 odd votes, 1% of that margin, and why he's in contention still for 2022, and the NRCC's looking to put some serious resources into that race. So, I'll speak for LD21 in this respect. We're excited for Tom's next step. We hope it is, in fact, that chase for CD7, because he really took it to Tom Malinowski, and we expect him to do the same thing in 22 and turn this district back red as soon as possible.
He didn't even lose by 5,000 votes, right?
It was like just over 5,000. I think it was a hair's breadth. We kept holding our breath as those vote counts were coming across. Hunterdon, especially Somerset, and of course Union, where the district is comprised of. So, yeah, look, Tom's been working hard here in LD21 and certainly in CD7 for a number of years now. He'll stay active, and we're excited by this opportunity. I came out early because I saw kind of the writing in the cards here, writing the stars in a certain sense. It's back to October when we knew something was going to shake up, and I didn't think it was John Bramnick. I didn't think it was Nancy Munoz, but it was likely Tom continuing to chase that congressional seat.
So I got to ask you, I mean, because I've gotten to know you a little bit. You're not one of these off-puttingly ambitious people. I mean, I'm sure, you're into politics like a lot of us. I'm sure you've thought about running for office for years, but you're not one of those people that you meet and you're like, there's nothing behind that guy's eyes but scheming. You're also a smart guy, so I'm sure there's other things you could be doing with your life right now to probably earn more money. What makes a nice young Republican like yourself, Steve, want to run as a Republican in 2021 at a time when, let's face it, your district ain't getting redder, it's getting bluer. There's barely any Republicans left in Union County right now. If you look at the registration numbers, it's dropping like a rock. What makes you take that kind of a jump, and what do you think that you can do to begin to reverse that trend starting in 2021?
Yeah, no, and I appreciate it's a very, very kind intro there, Matt. In terms of how I got involved here locally, certainly in Summit, I put my name out there, volunteering on local campaigns, helped with an at-large race here in Summit. I actually put my name forward for a local council seat to run against then the incumbent municipal chair. Wasn't successful, but true to a good organization, they saw my energy, they saw my interest, and they fast-tracked me in to run the party locally. And I've been invested in raising money for candidates up and down the ballot, candidate recruitment itself, trying to swing this Summit, this municipality back, into more friendly hands. But what really incentivized me to step forward this go around is very personal reasons, kind of where my family's at right now. My wife and I have two daughters, a 4-year-old and a 20-month-old. So Matt, you're on my heels, man. You're not too far off there. But my daughter's heading to kindergarten in the fall, which is a crazy thing to say because I'm still technically a YR, still technically a young Republican. But she's heading to the schools, and we're going to be here for 20 plus years. I know that. And I want to make sure that Republican voices are represented in Summit and in fact across LD21.
Well,
How did you become a Republican? You work for Frank Lautenberg, right?
yeah,
for a blink
I ask him about that.
For a blink of an eye. Yeah, I was a 20-year-old, in love with public service, and still then in deep blue New Jersey, and interned in his office. Had an opportunity to serve for less than 2 years. I was driving for him, doing constituent services, so nothing more than that. But it was really public service that inspired me to dip my toes in the water of politics early. And look, that appetite hasn't really gone away. It's taken different forms. Before I took that first job out of college, I was an Eagle Scout. I was a Boy Scout, doing my citizenship in the community merit badge, getting to know my local officials, getting involved in the community that way. And then, later in life, when I came to settle down, I got involved here in Summit in Republican politics. I grew up, in fact, in Morris County, out in Chester, Mendham. So in a little more friendly Republican territory still to this day. But yeah,
you're going in the wrong direction, my man.
My parents would tell me, yes, test my son, but staying where I am. We love our walkable downtown. My wife's law office is just a 5-minute walk, down here by the train station. So Summit's a wonderful place. And all of a few years ago, it was, deep red. There was full control of the mayor and the council seats. It's since swung in the opposite direction. But I see potential in even those young folks that are moving out of New York City, Hoboken, Jersey City, those changing demographics we continue to decry. When it comes down to it, they're looking for good schools. They're looking for safe communities. They're concerned about affordability. And those are all things that my family and I are confronting daily, and why I put my name forward this go around to have those conversations in a really authentic manner, because that's what I'm living.
Well, wait a minute, Steve. I want to ask you something. Why did suburban women desert the Republican Party, and what the hell do they want?
I think they need better messengers, Art. I think that's, that for me, that what boils it down to is some poor branding. And I think, I look at LD21, you look at the fact that, President Trump didn't do well here. That's that's no question about that. But folks like Tom Kane have found success in LD21, in CD7, the sliver of CD7 that is LD21. So there's something about the messenger that matters, the message and the messenger, and marrying those together is a reason why I think, women like my wife, who I hope is watching or maybe listening through the doorway here, I'm hopeful that women like her that care about providing a good quality of life for their family are going to find a more compelling message from Republicans than they are Democrats in these suburban districts.
Well, why the heck don't Republicans start really hitting hard at these messages, like getting kids back to school? Okay, which would seem, it seems to me, and I know Matt, you feel strongly about this, and Art probably does too, which it seems to me should be the central and premier message among a couple of others right now for this audience that's so critical.
Yeah, and I think that goes back, Dan, for me about branding and a connection with, the grassroots and this next generation. This is the experience that I had in Summit when I stepped into our local politics is, with due respect to the old guard, they hadn't done a good job bringing in a next generation of leaders, a next generation of volunteers to fill those ranks, to build up that pipeline. And it was only, really only impacted and kind of doubled down, what you're describing when President Trump came through, rubbed an awful lot of suburban voters the wrong way. And, unfortunately, we found ourselves, really rapid decline. But I'm hopeful. And look, this is why I stay involved, is not just for my selfish personal reasons, but because we're rebuilding these parties here in suburban New Jersey. We're having success. It's the tough, the reality of all this, though, Dan and Art and Matt, and you guys all know this, is it's a long game. This isn't a single cycle that we're going to flip things around. You got to build a bench, you got to raise money, you got to hone that messages, and you've got to convince these suburban voters, not just women, men and women alike, that you're a credible messenger. And that's just hard. It's just plain old hard work. You can't get away from that.
It's actually a fair point you make about suburban voters not just being women, because I saw one analysis of exit polling today from a Washington Post columnist that said that, it's not that the problem with young, educated women is completely overstated, but Trump may have actually hemorrhaged suburban men as well. Right. So there may not have been the gender gap that we originally anticipated, or at least ultimately saw on election day and as they counted the ballots over the course of weeks. Let's address this head on, though. What are the issues that a suburban voter in LD21 can latch onto this coming cycle that will make them say, you know what, I still kind of think Orange Man bad, but this Steve Spurr guy, he doesn't give me the chills in a bad way. I'm going to run away from him and keep voting Democrat.
Yeah, and look, in any other cycle, I'd love to be talking about purely pocketbook issues. I'd love to pull up a graph for you and show you where your tax rates are and what the poor return on investment is for your county tax dollars. But frankly,
a lot of voters don't care.
I agree, and that's,
I hate to say it, but it's true.
In a community like Summit, we just saw a report. I think statewide average property taxes are like $9,000. Here in Summit, it's $18,000. Folks aren't batting an eye. They're coming out of the city, right, where they were paying for private school anyways, and they're thankful for the good quality public education they got, and they think they're getting a deal at $18,000. So those pocketbook issues aren't going to motivate voters like they maybe should or would have in prior years. What I think is going to motivate voters this go around, this cycle, is going to be what Dan was hinting at there. It's going to be COVID. It's going to be the state government's response to COVID, or frankly, the mismanagement. We're going to talk about long-term care. We're going to talk about vaccination distribution, and we're going to talk about schools. Because I can tell you from the outset of COVID, I saw my oldest daughter's development stunted by her sitting in front of a Zoom screen in 30-minute increments at the age of 4. And I can't even imagine what elementary, middle school, and high school age students were seeing. And what was helping kind of validate for me the concern that I had in my own household, my mother's was a public school teacher, just retired last year after 20 years. And she and teachers like her they're mystified by what the state has put forward. It doesn't make sense to them that smokers are getting vaccinations before teachers are, and what the massive effect, the benefit, frankly, can be for returning those teachers back to the classrooms and returning the students back to the classrooms. So COVID's going to be it. And as a Republican message, a Republican lens on COVID is what's going to set us apart.
And I think you mentioned vaccinations and the state's failure, frankly, to deliver an efficient vaccination program. There's some things that's going to get harder and harder to lay at Donald Trump's feet as he fades into his golf course in Florida. And because this impeachment trial can't last forever, even though it feels that way if you watch it today. Oh, my God. But, I'm looking right now at one of my favorite Twitter accounts, the Woke Zombie. I don't know if you're a fan of the Woke Zombie, but she breaks down. So, yeah, isn't she really, Art? She breaks down so much of the data that we get from the Murphy administration that's either incomplete or presented in a manipulative way. And there's a story to tell for Republicans. I'm looking at the top counties right now, the 4 top counties in particular, for getting the percentage of residents vaccinated. And it's Cape May County, Morris County, Monmouth County, Atlantic County, 4 counties that are solidly Republican. If you look at the bottom of the scale, it's Hudson, it's Mercer, it's Union. It's counties that are run by Democrats. And frankly, if you believe the Murphy administration and their presentation of the data, it's also home to some of our state's most vulnerable populations. So, Republicans need to be talking about this, and it sounds like you plan to.
Absolutely. Look, this is the same administration that was on its knees pleading for COBOL programmers, if you'll remember that, months ago, to try to bring our unemployment system back into some effect. And it's still struggling. You're still hearing stories in your local legislative offices about folks months after months after months struggling to get unemployment payments. So look, this isn't a new or unique thing. The governor can talk about all the mega vaccination sites he wants or the public-private partnerships, but he's not getting the job done. And there's just fundamental mismanagement in Trenton, and it's evident around every corner.
Well,
Hard to disagree.
Steve, one of the things you said was you want to go after. Now, you said in your district you're not sure that property taxes is as much of an issue as it would be somewhere else, or at least in your hometown. But you said you want to go after the primary drivers of the high property tax. That's what you're going to zero in on. Now, look, I've been hearing people who were running for the state legislature talk about bringing down the property taxes all my life.
Yep.
And that's a long time. And I've been in here in New Jersey the whole time. All right. Don't ask me why I'm still here. Don't even go into, let's not even go into that. All
You're a
right.
state treasurer, Dan.
Well, you
Stay
told
put,
us,
right?
Carol
What are
doesn't
the
think so.
primary drivers of the property tax then, Steve, that you want to go after?
Well, when you look at how property taxes, and we won't get too academic on you, how property taxes break down, it's of course schools. So we should talk a little about school funding formula. We should talk about county government, which is an interesting component as well. Here in Union County is roughly the equivalent size of Morris County, and the budget of Union County versus Morris County is twice the size. And there's something to be said about inefficiency in government that I believe at the state level is where that change has got to be driven. Otherwise, the freeholders, or now commissioners, I suppose, down in Elizabeth are going to keep doing what they're doing, and there's going to be no meaningful change there. Because I think municipalities are doing their best when it comes to property taxes to manage their sliver of the budget, but it is school funding formula and county government that is driving increasingly, even with the 2% caps in effect, just driving this growth in property taxes. And what I want to be clear about property taxes, not being palatable, is when we talk about property taxes and where frankly we've made some headway in terms of economic issues, is not just talking about numbers. It's scary to say that average property taxes here in Summit are that $18,000 figure. So that's scary enough for anybody. But what voters are actually concerned about and where there's an opportunity is around return on investment, ROI. Am I getting bang for my tax dollars? And that returns us back full circle, Dan, to kids back in schools. If parents are justifying these $18,000 a year property taxes, but they're sitting their kids in front of a laptop for at least half, if not a full day of instruction, that can't last forever. That's a huge disconnect in terms of where those dollars are going and where taxpayers, where families, where our children are seeing a return. So all this is interconnected. I'm not giving up on the pocketbook issues, but we got to contextualize it in this moment. And it's all about COVID and about the failure of government to return $40 billion at the state level, our average $18,000 in property taxes here in Summit, returning back to the taxpayers what they're putting out paycheck after paycheck.
I'm so hard to hear you talk this way, because this is how I've begun to think about COVID, that this has really been the ultimate example of how Republicans should be able to articulate how and why the other side's ideas suck. And being a Camden County guy, for example, building off what you're saying, Steve, I've said this for years, and I've had some success with some of my woke liberal fellow suburbanites down here by pointing out that we're spending something like $20,000, $30,000 a year per child K through 12 in Camden.
Yep.
And Camden has no ratables. So where's that money coming from? It's coming from elsewhere.
Yep.
And I would almost be okay with it if those kids were going to college and succeeding and being able to build a nucleus in these communities
Sure.
that we could build on and actually make Camden and other urban centers rise out of the ashes that decades of failed liberal urban planning has reduced them to. But that's not happening.
And the other side of that coin, though, Matt, and I'm going to throw a bone to Jack Chitterelli here, is, when we think about our property taxes, we think about taxation here in New Jersey. In suburban communities like Summit, like a lot of the communities here in LD21, we're paying twice for education. We're paying in our property taxes, and we're paying also for those children, God love them, in Jersey City, which hasn't seen a serious reevaluation in a number of years because the school funding formula is broken. So I'm paying for them in my income taxes, and I'm paying for my own kids in my property taxes. And that's no way to fund government, to fund these fundamental services. I mean, especially in areas, and this is where Jersey City is perhaps contrasts Camden. And Jersey City pre-COVID, and I would still argue today, is on the up and up. If you've been down there, I mean, these are incredible places. And the fact that suburban communities are subsidizing the school districts in those urban communities tells you something's not right.
Pilot is a huge issue with Jersey City, and we've written some stuff on that at Save Jersey. But to your point, God love them. God does love these kids. Yeah. The Trenton liberals do not really give a damn about these kids, and I think it's about time we just say so. That's my not so humble opinion about it. And COVID provides an opportunity because it shines a light on these disparities. If you look at, I know you're talking about getting our kids back in school, and I think we should drill down a little bit further on that. Yeah. I think there's about like 190 districts in New Jersey that are still all remote. Yep. Disproportionately, they're poor districts. So these kids are home. Many of them, they're in a house where maybe they're living with a grandparent or there's only one parent. That parent either isn't able to be there or they've had to give up shifts and therefore give up money for their family in order to be home to make sure they're supervising participation in school. Democrats aren't talking about it. Democrats don't care about it because it's a problem they don't want to shine a light on. We should be talking about it.
I'm going to take an issue with that because I think Murphy and his team do care about it and they're prepared for it. All the issues that we're talking about tonight are valid and are winning arguments today. But I'd be willing to bet good money or a steak dinner for all four of us that come September,
I'm writing this down.
Come September, New Jersey schools are going to be open. So we want to, as Republicans, and think about this, Stephen. You're obviously a smart guy. What's the message that is going to be and people aren't going to start really paying attention to this election until September. Yeah. What's the message that
Art? That's a great point.
What's the message we're going to deliver in September and October to beat them?
Well, part of that
going to be open,
though.
and let me go on. It's like he hoarded and is still hoarding the first round of CARES Act money, billions of dollars, that he's going to start doling out to small businesses this summer. Mm-hmm. You say, I shut you down to get us safe. We're through it now. Here's money to get you open. If you look at this plan critically and don't just look at what's happening right now, but look at what's their plan. Their plan is really obvious. He's going to pump money into all these small businesses and restaurants that are really angry with him now. He's going to say, we saved lives by shutting down, good on you, and schools open. And all the things that you're preparing for right now that people are angry about are not going to be there in September and October. They're not. So and all the principles you're talking about, so what is going to happen? Kids will be back to school, but they'll be dealing with what you saw, the aftermath, of year off.
Yeah, no, so that's called the achievement gap, right? And we've heard that in a different context, Art. But you're exactly right. I mean, this lost year. I mean, the most tangibly you can think about high school seniors and what it's like to have lost a year, not just of social interaction, not just of instruction, but this critical turning point in their lives and what that's going to mean in terms of their trajectory into college and into employment ultimately. So the story for Republicans to tell is certainly about the legacy of Phil Murphy's mismanagement of COVID. And Phil Murphy, just to be 100% clear on this, he owns this. He owns the state's response to COVID, for better or worse, because of these recurring executive orders, because of the confidence that him and his administration have in making these decisions. And I'm really glad you brought up the CARES funding and the fact that he has sat on hundreds of millions of dollars that could have bridged the gap, that could have got PPE and other necessary equipment to open these schools much earlier in this process. And they've been happy for political
businesses, and we've got to find a way to make the issue about his competence.
Yeah.
And the fact that, when people are celebrating that they got a $50,000 grant to reopen their restaurant, or they got, where, their kids are back in school, and there's going to be a lot of money spent making people feel good that are now people are downtrodden or frustrated because they can't get a vaccine. How do we bottle the frustration that's there now to get, and have people express it in October and November? I don't think you can. People vote emotionally. We saw that with President Trump. His policies were great for America, were great for New Jersey. But he made them uncomfortable when he spoke, and they were tired of the fighting. He didn't need to fight, at all. He really didn't. He could have been a legendary leader.
Yeah, no, and I think though, Art, this is partly why, again, selfishly, I came out so early, and I believe that this contest has begun now, and Jack Cheerley has been given a tremendous gift, due respect to Doug Steinhardt, to have a clear lane to go mano a mano against Phil Murphy for these 10 months ahead of us. So look back, the operative word in your question was deliver, and Republicans need to deliver door to door to Republicans, to unaffiliated, and even Democrats, frankly, the hockey moms of the world that haven't been able to watch their kids play, those parents that have been watching their kids sit at home in front of a Zoom screen because of the decisions made in state government. And that, I think to your point, if we wait until Labor Day to make that argument, I don't know how it ends up, but I feel really good about the Republican ticket.
You need to come up with a message that counters how good people are going to feel when they're getting their government aid from Murphy and their kids are back at school. People are going to be happy. There's going to be happy days are here again. People are going to be coming off the summer, which if we have a summer like we had last summer, COVID's going to be down. People are going to be vaccinated. We're going to be hitting that 70% mark sometime in September, and this is going to be behind us. So we got to keep having the conversations we're having now, but plan for, and what's going to move people emotionally for a Republican to win in New Jersey, where there's more than 1 million more Democrats than Republicans. We need to be a big dent in those Republicans.
Well,
Democrats.
I think Steve kind of touched on this a little bit earlier indirectly, and he said something that I very much have come to believe, and it probably is self-evident, but messenger matters. As much as those of us that are in politics, around politics, talk about politics, love to talk about quote unquote issues, ultimately these things are popularity contests, and how it's delivered and who's delivering it, who's administering the medicine matters as much as what the medicine is. And I think one of the mistakes, and I'd like to get Steve's take on this with our Republican politics in New Jersey and our approach thus far, is to forget that, as Art says, there is an emotional component to this. And if we go into the fall and people are allowed to be deceived into thinking that Phil Murphy is anything other than what he is, which is a scumbag that has the blood of 8,000 nursing home victims on his hands, yep. We're screwed. We're screwed because, and I'll tell you why, building off what Art said, because even though people like myself and Steve Spurr and Art Gallagher and Dan Cerrucci and Jack Chiarelli will meticulously lay out all the valid reasons and ways that Phil Murphy has bungled this entire thing, what's going to happen? A lot of voters are going to have an emotional response and say, but you know what? COVID was hard. COVID was difficult. COVID was hard to wrap your mind around.
That's right.
But doing things like giving a vaccine to prisoners before teachers and nursing home residents, when
Yep.
they're dying in droves,
Yep.
not giving a shit about whether or not that kid is stuck at home having suicidal thoughts on Zoom and his parent can't be there because they have to be out working that second job because dad lost his job or mom lost her job. We need to talk about these things in human terms.
Yep.
And if we talk about them in human terms, I think it makes it harder for Phil Murphy and his ballot running mates to escape what they've done. Don't you think?
Yeah, and what I would add to that too, though, Matt, is, one of the things that stuck out to me and why I've put my name forward for state legislature especially is because the people's voice in too many respects has been neutered. And frankly, the representatives have been neutered. It's been something else to watch Sweeney and Coughlin and the Democratic caucus in both those houses just play along and let this stuff just roll right on through. And be it suburban districts like LD21 or New Jerseyans across the state haven't had their voice heard. And the legacy of Phil Murphy may very well be one. And we joke about, the New Jersey Assembly Republicans do a good job with some great memes out there of Phil Murphy donning that crown and, trying to govern New Jersey as a monarch with his own decree. And that's no way for the voice of a diversity of residents, men, women, young, old, immigrants, those that have been here for many generations. Mr. Cerrucci's 40 plus years. That those voices aren't being heard, and there's something to even in New Jersey representative democracy.
Please don't call me Mr. You make me feel old, Steve.
That was a 1-2 punch, man. I like that. See,
Any minute he's going to start addressing me, sir.
I was going to offer that as an alternative, but we'll go with Dan, I suppose.
Let me ask you this, Steve. What about, you see any potential for these hearings now that the Republicans have announced, that Kane has announced, and Testa's going to be on there, Panaccio's going to be on there, Corrado's going to be on there. They're going to hold their own hearings, the Republicans, on Murphy's response or lack thereof to COVID. Do you see any hope for this along the lines of what you've been talking about?
I see hope, but only if the message gets out. And unless Matt Rooney's viewership and Art, yours, and Dan with your blog, you guys have an exponential growth in your viewership, this message isn't going to get out. And I think, is my belief, that the messengers have got to be the 40 Senate candidates, the 80 Assembly candidates, and Jack Ciattarelli at the top of the Republican ticket this cycle, telling and spreading that message. So that, look, back to messenger, I'll keep hammering that point home all night with you guys. We've got to get people out there that are willing to hit the ground and deliver this message in very clear facts, because folks too, I think, are exhausted after years and years of being berated by constant media and social media. We've got to find a way to personalize this message, and we got to take it on the ground. And that's tough medicine. I get it. We want to sit back and be keyboard warriors, social media warriors, but it's not the way we're going to get this through. So I'm hopeful that Senator Kane and the Senate Republicans and others are going to help, write that script for us, but we got to be the one to deliver it at the end of the day.
Well, let me ask you about an issue that might be emotional, that might be a hot button issue, and it's not directly related to COVID, but it sort of is related to COVID in the context of people being economically pinched in this whole thing. Mm-hmm. And it is also related to the sort of arrogance and corruption of the state legislature. And that is this damn gasoline tax stunt that they pulled, where not only did they raise the gasoline tax by a quarter, I think it was, after we had promises that it wouldn't happen, and we know there was a lot of waste in the transportation fund, but now we've got this automatic increase in the tax, which we just had to go around with in October. And you see those gas prices coming up. Will you support repealing that automatic increase in the gasoline tax?
I mean, that's just the tip of the iceberg, though, Dan. I mean, it's unbelievable to see the state's coffers swell. So the gas tax is one piece of the puzzle. Emergency borrowing has got to be another, where we built in this multi-billion-dollar surplus to give the Democrats in Trenton the cushion that they needed to continue their spending. So look, there's a holistic look at how we collect revenue as a state. The gas tax is a piece of that puzzle that we got to go and we got to look at. because I think one of the frustrating things that I see is, there's an awful lot of thought, some successful, some not. We'll hopefully talk about marijuana a little bit in terms of, some of these revenue streams that Democrats have put into place over the years, but there's not a lot of thought in terms of how that money gets spent and put into places that it really matters. There's been next to no discussion over the years of a dedicated operating revenue source for NJ Transit, for example, which could have kind of completed the circle when it came to raising those gas taxes. But instead, we're happy to see that money flow into the general fund and go right out the other side. So yeah, Dan, I mean, look, we got to turn the screws on this stuff. We got to start with everything little to big, but the state budget is just swelling out of control. There's just no appetite for discipline among the folks that are in Trenton right now. And we got to change the tone. And I think folks like me, folks like your previous, your guest, Jesse Kurtz, I think we're going to lay down some pretty different and fundamental rules for how we look at budgeting and spending in the state.
Because we raised hell on our blogs about this whole gas tax thing when it came up. And then enough Republicans voted for it, just enough Republicans voted for it, put this damn thing into effect.
Yeah. No, it's been disappointing, and I think folks are taking notice. But it's the beauty of New Jersey politics in some respects is it's a process of boiling a frog, right? It's a slow and steady boil over the years. And look, maybe you ask me in 20, 30 years, I'll still be simmering in that boiling pot. But I got to speak up now. Folks like me, I'm 34 years old. If I'm going to live here, if I'm going to be able to afford to live here in 40 years, Dan, after, long after, all this has passed, I mean, we got to put our foot down somewhere. We got to draw a line in the sand. And, stunts like the gas tax is something we got to look at, really, really closely, because it's not helping us by far.
Steve, how many competitors do you have for the nomination so far?
Last I heard, there were, I think, 5 other competitors. But to be honest with you, I mean, so I came out Jan 3. I think Assemblywoman Munoz, though it was a bit of a formality, announced her intent to run again earlier this week. I've seen next to no voices come up on the Republican side publicly. And then if you're paying attention to the Democratic side, I mean, there's a whole slew of folks kind of chomping at the bit. A lot of folks out of sync with, what the district is all about.
So you don't have a competitor for the nomination at this point?
I don't have a clear competitor, if you want my opinion right now. And I think, that's partly a product
of fact. It's not an opinion. You have one or you don't, right?
I don't have a named competitor right now. And, just before this call, I was on the UC GOP chair's call where they're sorting out the convention details. So, I think in the next week or so, we'll start seeing, some names formally pop up in the news. But, right now it's a short runway. And I think there'll be a bit of a scurry for attention coming into the convention. But, it's really surprising, frankly, and it speaks to, I think, some lack of planning here among the bench of candidates for Assembly and LD21 that, folks didn't jump out a little bit sooner. We got to be ready for these opportunities. We can't expect Tom Kane, John Bramnick, and Nancy Munoz to sit in those seats forever. We got to be thoughtful as municipal chairs, as candidates in local office, to think about the future of, in this case, Republican politics in this district.
Well, you're obviously the front runner for the nomination, but would you anticipate a primary if you did not get the organizational? Well, and I guess you have multiple counties too, so you might be guaranteed a primary, right? Some people might want.
It's possible, yeah. LD21 is comprised. It's 60% Union County, and then it's split 40% between Somerset and Morris. So yeah, look, there's a potential for a primary challenge. I think Union County, frankly, will settle that. I think it's very unlikely that someone coming out of Union County that's not successful in grabbing that line is going to contest the seat. But we'll hold judgment. We'll see the message that comes out and the vision that we have for success here. At the end of the day, there's a balance to strike. We like primaries because we want a healthy challenge. We want the best possible, strongest candidates to emerge. But on the other hand, we want to concentrate our resources towards defeating the Democratic opposition come November. So it's a decision we'll make, and certainly I will if I'm not successful in coming through the convention. But I think we'll know March 6th is the Union County Convention. Mark your calendar. I think we'll know then about what the LD21 Republican slate will be looking like.
Well, your district in some ways is like a reflection of LD1 down south closer to me, because so often, Mike Testa is a good example, State Senator Mike Testa. He comes from Cumberland County, which is the bluer of the 2 major counties that dominate that district. And the thinking is always, well, if someone can do well in Cumberland County and hold down Republican losses in places like Millville, then certainly that's someone that they can do well in Cape May County and then carry the district. So if you have a Republican that can find a way to go into places like Westfield and peel off the orange man bad voters and get them to consider a guy like Steve Spurr, you shouldn't have as much trouble by the time you get to Morris County. So that may be something that's playing into your favor, I guess, if the district, I was going to say district representatives, if the various committee members are thinking this whole thing with a tactical mindset.
Yeah, no, and that's the gamesmanship that's underway, right now in terms of, focusing our energy and the time. And I, to be honest with you, though, the math will tell you that spending nearly all of your time in Union County is almost the only play. I've made it a real point to reach out to Laura Ali in Morris County and the Morris County Republicans, who have had an interesting few weeks behind them now.
They've got a line now for you to compete for.
Yeah, they do. And then, also Somerset County, which, has seen, a couple of tough years here. But if you haven't had a chance to talk to their chairman, Tim Howes, get him on the line at some point. He's someone that's got a really astute mind, really thinking about this strategically and long term. So that's one of the things that encourages me about LD21 is we've got 3 good county organizations that when working in concert, they can win. You saw that, frankly, with this this close loss that Senator Kane just faced in CD7. But this is a Republican district. This is a place that responds well to Republican values. We just got to go out there and earn every single vote. There's just no way about that.
Well, in Pennsylvania now, it looks like they're going to be able to put a question on the ballot to curtail, in response to Wolf and his imperious powers, to curtail his emergency powers. The Republican legislature, which they are fortunate to have in Pennsylvania to the extent to which it's effective, are going to put this on the ballot. Now, how do you see us curtailing these repeated emergency declarations of King Murphy here in New Jersey? How are you going to go about getting rid of that?
We got to throw all our effort and energy behind folks like Assemblyman Brian Bergen and others in the Assembly and in the Senate that have called for curtailing the legislation that exists today that allows Governor Murphy to indefinitely roll over those emergency orders. And I believe there's going to be examples that we can find of Democrats paying the price of concentrating so much power and so much decision making in one single office. So that issue, the emergency orders rolling over what I believe is 11 times by now. We've been a full year under these emergency powers, is something that Democrats and Republicans should come together to reasonably ask for. We should see Senator Sweeney and Senator Kane together bringing back control, bringing back oversight, reasonable oversight by that matter, back into the legislature. And again, this is why I'm in the fight for the state legislature. It's unbelievable what we've done in terms of finding the legislature subsidiary to the executive in this respect. It's just civics 101. It's unbelievable to see. I remember this from AP US history.
Well, that's the part about this that even though I should know better at this point in my life, I just find so surprising and disturbing that we now have lived in a state in the United States of America, one of the original colonies, and we've, for all intents and purposes, had a dictator. And I don't mean a dictator in like the, mid 20th century fascist sense. I mean a dictator in the ancient Roman dictator meaning of the word. We've had one for 11 months, a man who makes all the decisions, is not challenged, and just continues to control over almost every aspect of our life and lives. And to terrible effect, we've had a third of small businesses destroyed in 2020, which is a staggering number. 1 out of every 3 small businesses that was there at the start of last year wasn't there by the time you toasted your champagne with your mask off on New Year's Eve. It's incredible. And I got to think in your part of the world, Steve, you have to know some restaurants that were open and you dined at in 2019 that aren't there right now.
Sure. There's Florence Ravioli down the road in Scotch Plains that's closing up their doors after decades of serving their community. So it's little mom and pop shops that for nothing they've done wrong. And I think that's probably the frustrating part here is when you think about the ingenuity of Americans and New Jerseyans, go talk to some small business owners. They've done everything pre-pandemic to make those businesses succeed generation after generation. And for the governor, God bless him in his many years at Goldman Sachs, to think he's got a better idea and some better understanding on how to sustain those businesses and serve the community, he's got it all wrong. And again, that's where having the people's representatives bringing forth those experiences of local businesses, of parents, of seniors, of all those directly affected is the recipe for success in all this. New Jersey is a place of amazing wealth and ingenuity, great people with great ideas, and to concentrate that in one man, Republican or Democrat, by the way, is malpractice. And we're paying for that. And look, back to Art's point too, come September, you're exactly right. Many folks are going to look at this governor, a strong man, right, who stared danger down and brought our state back out, from the doldrums of a COVID pandemic, but not without any consequence. And it is our responsibility as Republicans to tell the story of that legacy, but to paint a picture of what recovery looks like, most importantly, and what a Republican recovery looks like versus what a Democratic recovery looks like. And I think those are starkly different realities.
I can't wait to hear what that looks like, because I hate saying this. I don't feel like I've heard what a Republican recovery looks like. People like myself and Art and Dan, our inboxes get slammed every day with press releases from legislators talking about any number of things. Some of them consequential, some of them not consequential on any planet, even when there isn't a pandemic going on. And I do think that it's a problem that Matt Rooney sitting here talking to you on February 10, 2021. I can't tell you what the Republican recovery program would look like. I can tell you what I think a conservative Republican program should be. God knows I write about it. God knows I talk to guys like you and Jesse Kurtz, who don't have their heads up the rear end, who I think have some great ideas, but we just haven't heard that kind of a cohesive message coming out of the conference. So I want to ask you something else. I know that if you win and you make it to the assembly, you're going to be a freshman. And we all know that whether we're talking about a freshman on a sports team or a freshman that's part of a legislative caucus, you don't have all the power in the world. Sure. But you're going to have some influence because you'd be a young gun and you'd be a story. What can you do to kind of promote cohesion and communication between members of the Republican caucus to try to get a united front going? Because I'll tell you one more thing before I shut up and let you answer. One of the things that has surprised me so much over the years, Steve, is I talk to these legislators and I'll say to them, Legislator Joe Blow, have you talked to Legislator Jane Smith about this idea? Oh, we don't really talk. Well, did you bring this up at your caucus meeting? Oh, the caucus meetings, we kind of like read from an agenda and that's it. These people don't sit down like we're sitting down right now and actually have it out and talk about strategy. It doesn't happen. It blows my mind.
Especially, it's a great point, Matt, especially given how small the Republican caucuses are.
Right, there's six of them, for Christ's sake.
It's amazing. It's amazing that you and I know more of them than they know of each other.
Yes,
absolutely.
It
really amazes that, that even the area of the world where I have focused on primarily in Monmouth and Ocean County, how even those legislators don't know each other all that well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no. So I look, to jump in there, I think, and we see this elsewhere, and we don't need to talk about maybe some of the other examples of it, but there's a generational shift occurring here, and there's a responsibility that those that are leading the caucus right now, and I look within my own district, right, Assemblyman, Republican leader John Bramnick, and then young guns like me have to bridge that gap and to help build the Republican Party, these Republican caucuses, to such a degree that they can vie for a majority. It's not a joke. There's a potential for a Republican majority in the state legislature, but I don't know if we're working towards that right now. That's why, look, I'm frankly excited to even deepen my relationship with someone like John Bramnick that can help me look back a couple of years and help lay that foundation for a resurgence of a Republican brand. But you're right, we got to start talking to each other. We got to start sharing ideas. We got to get back in touch with with our districts and with the voters. It's something that doesn't get talked a lot about, frankly, when we have these kind of discussions, but good constituent services. And I think Republicans have distinguished themselves in any number of their offices fighting for example, unemployment benefits, for their constituents that have suffered month after month to not get much needed government assistance. So look, there's some real fundamental things that we got to be doing right. Best practices we've got to be spreading across the state. And that's how we're going to do it, district by district, raising the money, recruiting the candidates, and hitting the ground, and not being intimidated too. You know, there's an element of courage as well. You know, Republicans have been beaten down as long as I can remember in this state, and perhaps deservingly so, for not exhibiting a little bit of courage. And you know, back to our friend Jesse Kurtz, there's something to a Republican councilman in a place like Atlantic City that can tell you there's hope when you get a good message, a good messenger, and an awful lot of elbow grease in there. We can do this. I believe that, but we got to start now.
You totally can. And I think this is something that you need to communicate as you become a leader in the Republican Party to not just new folks that we want to bring into the tent, but also some of the older guard leaders like John Bramnick.
Yep.
If you like Donald Trump, fine. If you don't like Donald Trump, consider the fact that Republican fecklessness over the course of years and decades laid the groundwork for people willing to try a radical experiment in putting this guy in charge of the party. So
Exactly.
again,
the very people that are screaming and
if you-
crying about Trump now, the very people that counted themselves amongst never Trumpers and that are screaming and yelling and wringing their hands still about Trump in the Republican Party are the very same people, as you pointed out, Matt, who laid the groundwork for Trump.
right, you don't have Donald Trump without years of compassionate conservatism, for instance. You know, George W. Bush telling us that, I mean, it doesn't need a modifier, for God's sakes. When you say that you're compassionate conservative, you're essentially conceding that regular conservatism is not compassionate.
Right.
So
and
when
I
you've
think
got years of this, you've
Yes.
kind of backed us into a corner. You've diminished the movement.
that's right.
And then what do we have to build on? So, you know, I mean, it has to be, and that's why, Steve, like, and I'd like to get your take on some of this stuff, because, you know, I'm hearing right now this debate going on in Washington, D.C. that's spilling over, and you hear, you know, like Liz Cheney and Mitt Romney saying one thing, and then you've got like, what is it, Matt Gaetz from Florida saying something radically different. And I feel as if they're talking past each other, because the answer isn't to go back to 2016, but the answer sure as shit is not to go back to, 2012, right? When our prospects were not any brighter. I mean, if anything, we actually have a stronger Republican representation right now in Congress today than we did in 2009 after Obama won the first time.
I think, you know, not to take us a little off track here, but what's going to be an important unifier of those, you know, wings of the conservative movement of the Republican Party is going to be able leadership. You know, you look at what Republican leader McCarthy has done to try to bridge those divides and try to walk that fine line. And it's an exciting moment in New Jersey Republican politics, with great respect to Senate leader Tom Kean and Assembly Republican leader John Bramnick, to see that shaken up. I don't love the fact that it made the leadership positions may depart my district. It's a wonderful thing for us here, but it's exciting for us as Republicans in the state and for the respective caucuses to think about the direction they want to take and how we can bring together this party, all its various wings, to do one thing, which is challenge the status quo. And that status quo is an entrenched Democratic majority in both houses of the legislature, in the governorship, to shake things up and take a little risk. It's okay. There's not much to lose, frankly.
That's exactly right. Could not have said it better. That's one thing I've never quite understood. I get that you get the vanity license plate, and I guess that gets some people excited. But
Sure.
I mean, frankly, who wants to be king of the anthill? Yeah. I started out tonight saying that you're a smart guy, Steve. Guys like you could make a lot of money, I'm sure, doing something else. Yeah. So to want to go to Trent, the swamp to end all swamps, every day and deal with that nonsense. I quite frankly don't understand what the point is unless you're willing to throw some elbows.
Yeah, it's the definition of the bottom rung of the ladder, right? To be a freshman assembly member in the minority caucus of the decidedly minority party, but you got to start from somewhere. And look, I'm one of those folks that is willing and for some reason eager to start climbing that ladder, and to do it for all the right reasons, for my family, for our community, for Republican principles that, still have value and can turn this state around. I don't think New Jersey's a lost cause, despite what some folks, maybe believing heading for the exits.
Well, the other side has a 1 million person voter registration advantage right now. But what I try to tell myself, and maybe it's me just trying to keep Matt Rooney and my family from moving out of state. Maybe I'm trying to pacify myself of my own fears. But you've got basically a state that has not been seriously contested by conservative values for a long time. We had a brief moment in between 2009 and 2011 when Chris Christie was the perfect Republican candidate for the Northeast. But that was about it, because then he ran for president and the rest is history. So, I do have some hope for this year, I got to say, because guys like you, Jesse, I think Jack has a lot of potential if he runs the right kind of campaign. We could finally have that conservative campaign that we've been wanting. It's possible, but we have to be courageous. How do people find you online, Steve?
You can find me. I'm up on Facebook, and I parked an Instagram account as well. Spurr for Assembly, FOR. So you can catch me there. Send me an email, spurforassembly@gmail.com. I mean, that's partly the pleasure of this effort is I'm getting to know committee members across my district, municipal chairs, elected officials, and we have the tools that are going to be effective in winning this district come November, or whenever election day is going to be this year. So I'm excited to hear from anybody and frankly everyone that's got an idea on how we can, in LD21, hold these seats and inspire other Republicans across the state to win, and in time take back a majority in the state legislature.
I think Instagram's where to be too.
A donate button on any of those websites?
A donate button, absolutely, Art. If you accept Visa, MasterCard, American Express.
Okay, is there a website, or just go through Facebook to do
I'm
it?
just on social media right now, and I'm thankful it's been sufficient to connect with the electorate. These days, all the kids and even their parents are out there on the internets, on Instagram, and
So you
Facebook.
got a link to your donate button on your Facebook page?
Yep, you can find it in there. So everything from $25 up to the max, I'd welcome. This is going to be an expensive race. It was last year. I mean, I think the round number that people talk about for LD21 in 2019 was something upwards of $1 million. When you count in all that outside spending, who soon to be hopefully Senator Bramnick, Assemblywoman Munoz, and I will be raising hundreds of thousands of dollars. And we have to start that effort now. I certainly have. And, that's just one check mark in being a serious candidate. You got to be out there putting that hand out, asking for help every step of the way.
Well, I think I could speak for Dan Cerrucci and say that he's ready to max out right now to Steve Spurr.
With that library, I believe it, right? Look at him. He must be rolling in it.
He's rolling in it. He's a very wealthy retiree. I don't know about your state Senate candidate. That might be a harder sell, Steve. But
you get him back on here, and he can make his case.
I think there's a little doubt. We're gonna reach it. We'll let Art make that phone call.
There you go. But it's been a
I'll
pleasure.
be happy to make it.
We talked to him at the Republican Summit. We had a good conversation. I mean, he's another one that maybe some people get the wrong impression of those of us that spend all of our time online talking about this stuff. I actually get along with most people. I'm an attorney in Camden County, for God's sakes. If I didn't get along with Democrats and liberals and, moderates, whatever the hell that means, I'd be pretty damn lonely. But I personally think it's important to have some of these hard discussions about our rhetoric and our positions and how we're presenting ourselves as Republicans.
It is.
You got to have it.
And here in LD21, Matt, you can't deny that Assemblyman Bramnick's been a vote getter, proven vote getter over the years. He's delivering good district services. He's probably a good ideological fit for the district. You can't deny that, right? There's variation across the state. So
I like John Bramnick as a state senator in your district. I don't like John Bramnick as a leader of a statewide Republican Party.
Right.
And I'm not trying to box you in, because I know you're in that district, and you'd be a poor candidate if you were dumping on the rest of your ticket. No. I'm simply stating that, to me, I think that's an important distinction, that we have to recognize it as a party in a diverse state like New Jersey. Yeah, in every district, everybody's not going to agree on everything. There has to be some tolerance for differing opinions. But statewide, we need somebody that's going to throw punches, that's going to have a little bit of that Jersey attitude.
Right.
And I don't know, frankly, too. Sorry, Dan. Just, what I don't know, frankly, too, is where we're going to find that leader. I hope it's in the governor's seat, with Jack Chitterelli, come January next year. God willing,
Right.
that'll help coalesce the party.
Yeah.
If not, I do hope that our Republican legislative leaders are leading that charge. The NJGOP has been a voice in the room, over these past couple of years. I thought Doug Steinhardt did a lot of good, but I think we've got to find our voice in our state legislative leadership, absent the governor, because that's really where the fight's being fought, and where we can make a real impact. And not just clever press releases or apt social media. We've got to be delivering results, and it's got to be in one of these branches of government.
Oh, wait a minute.
And along those lines, I think it's important, and I mentioned this last week, and I think we need to change the legislative leadership now, not taking anything away from Senator Kane or Assemblyman Bramnick, but you got captains of the team that neither one of them are going to be on the team next year. So, and in an election year in particular, the most important job is raising money, recruiting candidates, crafting the message, approving the message, and getting people across the line. And Senator Kane's not running and should not be leading the Senate campaign. And Assemblyman Bramnick is running for Senate, and he's going to have a significant challenge. And he should, and he's going to have to raise a lot of money for his own race. He should not also be in charge of raising money to win back the legislature. We should be looking to pick up seats, and put everybody's feelings and prestige aside. We should set a goal for how many seats we're going to pick up this time, and then pick the best coach to make that happen, and then make it happen. And
Did you have an opinion? I'm sorry, both Art and I both cut you off. Sorry.
Do I have an opinion of who it's going to be? I do, but I'm not going to say who it is because I don't want to create a war.
Okay.
Art, start a war, man.
No, that's counterproductive. What I'd like to do, what I'd like is for Senator Kane and Senator Bramnick to say, God, what are we thinking? Of course. And to then the caucuses, there's a lot of people. I think there should be leadership representation. I'm admittedly biased, but I have the facts behind me. Nobody knows how to win in New Jersey more than Monmouth County Republicans. We are a Democratic registration county that consistently wins and has for decades. So,
that is a point that you've made before, Art, that I 100% agree with, and I'm probably extra sympathetic with it because I'm in a blue part of the state.
Yeah.
I think that the future leadership of the party has to come from purple or blue territory, places where it's hard to win, because then obviously one would think it's common sense. They know how to run winning campaigns in battlegrounds. I think that in the past, much of our leadership, and a lot of it's just because that's where Republicans happen to be getting elected, are coming from places where it's not as hard to win, or at least it wasn't too hard until recently. And that leads to a lot of complacency and the recycling of old ideas and just a lot of staleness generally. So, I mean, in that sense, I think you're right. I think maybe someplace like Monmouth, I think someplace maybe down in South Jersey, since we're starting to rebuild our legislative caucus, those are the kinds of places we maybe should be looking.
But since Steve asked, I would actually think for the Senate, as biased as I am for Monmouth County, I think I'm going to go north to Senator Oroho, would be a good leader for the Senate, and I'll take a Monmouth County or Ocean County leader for the Assembly, somebody like Ned Thompson, who represents both Monmouth and Ocean counties. I think would be a good leader in the Assembly, but someone who's going to raise the money, who's going to be able to recruit good candidates, who's got a track record of getting legislation approved, can work with the other side and still throw an elbow.
Well, don't tell Dan, because I've got nothing against Senator Oroho, but he was Mr. Gas Tax. That's going to burn Dan's biscuits. Look, he's not even talking.
I know.
You've frozen.
Listen, I put lists of those people who voted for it, those Republicans who voted for it on my blog again and again and again, and I will continue to. And I have not and will not forget them, and I see no reason why I should.
I love it.
We can get Senator Orho and Senator O'Scanlan on to make that case in some future Zoom call.
We should get Declan on here definitely soon. Maybe we can get him on St. Patty's Day and have a green beer or something.
And a lot of this too is connected. The thing I would add too is a lot of this is connected to the shuffle that's connected to be undertaken with redistricting. So look, these next couple of years are really interesting. And as a younger member of this party, you know, I'm optimistic we're going to end up in a good place as long as we find a constructive way to share these ideas and likely competing ideas about the future of our party. So it's a great time to get involved for any of those YRs out there sitting, you know, tuned into their own Dark Shadows marathon. You know, make sure to get involved now. You know, speak up, join your local Republican club. You know, send a direct message to Spurr for Assembly. You know, it's time to do it. It's time to get to work.
Amen. Amen. Steve Spurr, it was great having you on tonight. I appreciate you subjecting yourself to this this torture that is hanging out with the three of us for like an hour and a half.
It was a pleasure to, in a sense, to be your lead-in for Jack Chitterelli. I think he's your guest next week, so yeah, turn the screws on him too.
This is why you're such a great guest, because you provide such a great segue for me. Because now we're doing this guest thing every week, and I'm actually shocked that people want to come on and hang out with us on a Wednesday night when there's better things to do, but they're doing it anyway. We got Jack Chitterelli next week. We're doing this every Wednesday at 8:30, so he's on February 17th, and then obviously that's going to be a biggie because maybe it's too soon to call him the presumptive nominee, but he's definitely the front runner.
He's the presumptive nominee.
Is he the now the Hirsch Singh people are going to be all over my ass for the rest of the night.
They don't return my phone calls anymore. If you want, I'll give you the tips on how to get them to stop bothering you.
I probably could use some by the time the cycle's over. But Jack's coming on, the Dan Cerrucci, Art Gallagher crown presumptive nominee next week, and that'll be obviously interesting. And then we've got one I'm really looking forward to. We've got Regina Agia coming in on the 24th, who is, you want to talk about smart, successful Republican women.
One of the smartest people in New Jersey, one of the smartest people in government in New Jersey, and she knows how to fix it.
Yeah, we're gonna have to do some homework so we don't look like complete fools before she comes in. She's an ex-Christie chief of staff, for those of you that don't know her, but lately she's been working as president of the Garden State Initiative. And Garden State Initiative, for those of you that read Save Jersey, we are regularly using their economic reports, particularly when it's time to release the monthly job reports from the feds in the state, because they really get in there. They're kind of like the woke zombie of jobs reports in New Jersey and economic data. They decipher it for us and help it make sense. And so that's going to be a very interesting conversation, because we'll really dig into I'm sure, many of the deficits of the Murphy administration on that front. And then on March 3rd, we've got Mike Testa. We're talking about State Senator Testa a little while ago. He was the big star of 2019. So we'll probably ask him what he thinks about a ton of stuff, including Steve Spurr.
I'm going to ask him how much his dry cleaning bill was for that sanitizer I spilled on him.
Yeah, he's probably going to present Art with the bill during the Zoom, and we'll probably also, pick a fight with Mike on probably like the one or two issues we're not 100% on the same page. We should actually talk to Mike about vaccines. Because we had an interesting disagreement with him over the religious exemption, and now obviously that's going to be a big topic, which we haven't even gotten into. Steve's like, "Thank God that didn't come up."
Gotta go, guys.
Gotta go, guys, because that's gonna be a big one as kids go back to school. And then on March 10th, we've got Bridget Kelly, the recently exonerated by the United States Supreme Court, famed Bridgegate defendant, along with Bill Baroni. Her conviction was tossed out. I actually agree with the legal opinion on that one. I think that the prosecution screwed that one up royally. But now she's running for Bergen County clerk. this year, which is raising a lot of eyebrows and also raising some strong opinions about whether or not she's a good face for the party up there. So she's another one who, is very accomplished. So I'm looking forward to talking to her about Bridgegate, obviously, but also on a host of different topics. And she's another ex-Christie administration official who you may not love her, you may not respect her role in Bridgegate, but I'm interested in getting her perspective as someone who's actually been in that front office as to what's going on in the Murphy front office, particularly when it comes to how the Murphy people continue to basically treat the women that they're in charge of so poorly. We didn't get into that either tonight. We didn't talk about Hicks and the prison situation. There's just too much to talk about because New Jersey's such a basket case. So bottom line is we've got a ton of content coming up. Hopefully we'll get Steve back before the election too. We'll get an update from him in a few months. Just keep it here because we're going to continue to churn out great content. There's never a dull moment. There's plenty to talk about. Steve Spurr, thank you for joining us tonight, my friend, and good luck to you.
Thank you.
Art Gallagher of More Monmouth Musings, my friend, Dan Cerrucci, extremely wealthy retiree with an amazing library. It's always a pleasure to be with you guys.
Fan of candidates up and down the state. Dan, I'm going to be calling you after we hop off here, all right?
Absolutely.
If you need a speechwriter, there's no better PR guy at least in the Delaware Valley.
It's a pleasure. Thank you, everyone here, for taking the time tonight. It was great to talk
Hey,
LD21.
Good luck, Steve. I hope you don't get any competition for March 6th.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Art. Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Matt.
Good night, everybody. Good luck. God bless. Stay safe. And by all means, if you're visiting Sandy Hook this summer, don't drink and drive, okay? That's tonight's moment of Zen. Good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.